Okay, sorry, I had a issue with the name. Allie, it should be sent back to you, and UGTV will be started in about a minute.
Thank you.
UGTV is live.
All right, are we ready to roll?
I believe we are, Mayor.
Thank you, Brett. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, we have individuals attending remotely as well as on-site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. And during the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title so the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. I ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mayor. You are hereby notified that I have called a special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, to be held Thursday, March 25th, 2021 at 5 p.m. for a COVID vaccination update, a presentation by the Youth Fatality Review Board, and an update by the Tax Administration Coordination Committee. Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Burrows. Burrows. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here, and I think Burrows just got promoted, so you might ask again.
Okay. Commissioner Burrows. Okay, I believe he's present.
I am here, finally. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Mayor Alvey.
Here. All right, thank you. So three items tonight. First is a COVID-19 vaccine update. I'll turn over to Mr. Bach to introduce staff.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. As we have been rolling out a lot of vaccines in the community, we just wanted to take a few minutes at the beginning of the special session to give you an update on our progress in this area. We'll introduce Ms. Julianne Van Loo, our Director of Health. Julianne?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. If you hear some roaring in the background, my toddler has figured out what a dinosaur says. So that's happening. Just apologies. Can't quite keep her quiet. I've got just about a 10-minute update here for you on the vaccine front. To start off here, the first couple of numbers are specific to what the health department has done in terms of vaccinations. And so we have vaccinated folks with at least one dose, just shy of 30,000 of those folks. Yesterday, we hit our 50,000th actual shot that we administered, which was a nice kind of milestone to hit. The second couple numbers here pertain to residents across our entire county. So whether or not they received their vaccine through us or someone else, that's what these numbers here are. So number of residents who live here who have received one dose is about 24,500, which represents just shy of 15% of our community. And our number of residents who are completely vaccinated, that would be 2 doses of a 2-dose series or 1 dose of a 1-dose series, is just shy of 8%. So our numbers are not where we want them to be. We're working really hard to vaccinate as fast as we can to get folks in who are eligible. The good news is we are receiving about 6,000 doses of vaccine a week, which is allowing us to get a lot more people in than we were even just 4 or 6 weeks ago. But we are having a little bit of a trouble reaching some of the folks that we need to reach, which you'll see here in some of these next slides. When we look at our breakdown by age, again, these are residents who've been vaccinated. This graph looks a lot different than it did 3 or 4 weeks ago. There's a significant uptick in our older population who has been vaccinated, which is great. About a month ago, that 65 to 74 and 75 to 84 groups were much lower. We've been highly prioritizing them. They are now eligible to walk into any of our vaccine sites. Unfortunately, though, our 65 and older population in Wyandotte County, only about 50% of them have received their first dose. So we're doing everything we can to outreach to this population to make sure that they know what's available to them and to make it as easy as possible. When we break it down around race-specific vaccination rates, it's a bit interesting. Folks who identify as 2 or more races are actually the largest rate per 100,000, which is surprising to me. So these are folks who maybe perhaps identify as white and Asian or as Black and American Native. So all those folks fit in that 2 or more races category. Of course, you can see here that our Asian rate and our Black African American rate and our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander rate are all lower than our white rate. So we are working hard to try to get those up as well. But honestly, the race variation or inequities are not as steep as I thought they would be. What I'm most concerned about here is the ethnicity disparities. So you can see that our non-Hispanic rate of vaccination is significantly higher than our Hispanic rate of vaccination. So we're doing a lot of stuff to try to target that community via media, via getting Spanish speakers out into the community, knocking on doors with this kind of community. We're trying to ramp up our mobile vaccines to bring those to churches where Hispanic folk often congregate. So we're trying to reach this community as best we can, but I think this is going to be a pretty long-term effort for us over the next 6 to 12 months. And then lastly here, our last bit of data, just kind of an update on where we are across zip codes. We continue to see some disparities. 66012 has now outpaced 66109 in terms of rate of vaccination. But of course, you'll see here 66101, 102, 104, and 105 remain significantly behind, some of these at half the rate of our highest rated zip code. So again, putting every effort towards reaching these communities. We are bringing on a number of canvassers who will literally be going door to door, signing folks up, getting people appointments, helping them get transportation. Those folks will be deployed specifically to these most high risk, underperforming zip codes, which we hope will help. We've obviously opened the Armory site, which is more accessible to some of these zip codes as well. But we just have a lot of work to do to continue to reduce barriers for people. So let's talk eligibility here a little bit. Most of you have probably heard the state as a whole. KDHE and the governor's office moved us all to phase 3 and 4 beginning earlier this week on Monday. So we moved to phase 3 and 4 simultaneously, which was interesting and quicker than we thought it would be, but we were glad to do so. So what this means for us is that beginning next Monday, we're already vaccinating folks in phase 3 or 4, but beginning next Monday, anyone from phase 1 through 4 can begin walking into any of our sites. So again, we're trying to reduce barriers here. People can also make an appointment online on our website by themselves without calling our call center beginning Monday as well. So phases 1 through 4 kind of open across the board, not restricting any zip codes at this time for those 4 phases. And I'll give you a little bit more here on what is new in phase 3 and 4. So in phase 3 and 4, it adds a number of employment sectors who are now eligible for the vaccine. You can see them here: agriculture, social services, so all of our nonprofit kind of networks, really increasing transportation. So previously we were vaccinating transportation related to public transit and people transporting people, and now that expands to transporting goods as well. Shelter and housing workers, so that adds construction workers. We're also including like plumbers and electricians and anybody who's in your home, making sure you can stay in your home safely would be eligible. Finance sector, bank tellers, information technology and communications. So you can see here, there's really an expansion of the types of employees that are now eligible for the vaccine. And frankly, we're trying to find ways to say yes. So we're trying to fit people into these sectors so that they are eligible for the vaccine, since we have the vaccine and we have the capacity. So again, as a reminder, beginning Monday, any folks from any of these employment sectors can either go online and get themselves an appointment, or they can walk into our centers. And the last and very large group in phase 3 and 4 that's new for us this week is our folks with medical risks. So previously, these medical risks were broken into different categories, some in phase 3 and some in phase 4. It's one of the nice reasons why we're moving to phase 3 and 4 simultaneously, is it just pushes everybody with medical risks to the top of the line. So I won't read through all of these, but it's a fairly exhaustive list. A lot of our community will fall eligible under type 1 and 2 diabetes. We have a lot of those folks. We have a lot of folks with heart disease, obviously, and cancer. So these are some really big buckets that will bring eligibility to, quite frankly, the majority of our adult population. We do want to make sure people know at this point in time, we are only vaccinating our residents. This is a shift for us. Earlier on in late December, January, we were vaccinating people who live or work here. And that was really about safety, because we were vaccinating our healthcare professionals, our public safety folks, our teachers, et cetera, who are at high risk by virtue of their job. And we just had to vaccinate those who only work here and don't live here. But at this point of time, with the communities surrounding us, the county surrounding us, able to step up and vaccinate their own residents, kind of on par with us at this point, we are able to restrict it just to residents. So this may change in a couple months. We may be able to go back to vaccinating anybody who lives or works here. But right now we need to keep it to residents. And one of the main reasons we need to do that is because we are third to last in the state for our percent of our population that is vaccinated. Again, you saw earlier, only about 8% of our community is fully vaccinated. This is not a reflection, I don't believe, of our vaccination efforts or the numbers of folks we are vaccinating. Again, it's a reflection of those first couple months when we were vaccinating a lot of folks who worked here but didn't live here. So we're just really trying to, at this point in time, prioritize our own residents. So if you do come for a vaccine, whether it's an appointment or a walk-in, you need to bring proof of residency, a piece of mail, an ID with an address, whatever works for you. And if you are eligible by virtue of your employment, you need to bring proof of that as well. And we're really flexible on what constitutes proof of employment. So an ID badge, come in your work uniform, bring a pay stub, bring a letter from your employer, whatever it takes to just let us know that you do indeed work in transportation, or you do work in construction, or whatever it is. So we don't want these to be barriers to people, but we do still need to do our due diligence in making sure that we're vaccinating our residents who are eligible. And kind of one last plug on the vaccine front, a reminder for folks that homebound folks can get the vaccine for free delivered to them in their home, and that we are also providing free transportation to and from all vaccine sites. So folks can go online to our website. There's an easy form to request either a homebound vaccination or transportation, or they can call 311 to get connected to a community health worker that will arrange all of that for them. So both of those initiatives are going very well and getting some really positive feedback from the community. So just hoping to continue to expand those. Mr. Mayor, perhaps we should pause here and take vaccine questions before we move into the other part of my presentation.
Yes, Julianne. Julianne, I just want to comment. I read an article, I think over the weekend, that interestingly enough stated that those places that were in the lead in bringing vaccination sites online and were very aggressive, as we were, and able to get that, but not able to get the vaccines to fully utilize the sites, are actually having more difficulty getting their numbers. Those places that came on later, when the vaccine was more available, are actually having more effectiveness. And their speculation is that because we were frustrated, and we were very clear about our frustration to the governor and to Senator Marshall and Representative Davids, we were very clear that if we could get more vaccines, we could fully utilize our vaccination site, the early one, and that message then was received by the public that, okay, they're not available, and so they might have gone elsewhere, right? They might have, when they started allowing them people to go to a CVS or someplace to get it. I know people who, because we could not get they could not get the vaccine here, went to other jurisdictions, other places to get the vaccine, even though they had to pay for it. So I think it's interesting. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. But the speculation, at least on this one piece, was that those places that were most effective in rolling out a vaccination clinic but could not get the vaccines because there was not ample supply ended up getting behind the curve because people believed it was not available and they went elsewhere.
We've certainly seen, especially in our older population, when we hadn't opened up to 65 and older quite as soon as some of our surrounding counties, that some of our older population were able to get it elsewhere or via their pharmacy. At this point, we're just really ramping up our communications work. We're moving to kind of old school stuff. We're moving to door knockers. We're moving to being out in the entry areas of grocery stores to get the word out. We're planting community health workers at different neighborhood sites so that they're actively letting people know that they can sign up immediately for an appointment. So you're probably correct. It is unfortunate. We are seeing not as much hunger for the vaccine as we would like to see at this point. But all that said, we've still got 100,000 adults to be vaccinating in Wyandotte County. So we've got a lot of work kind of ahead of us.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always, Julianne, thank you for all that you do for your department and all your staff, all our public health department, and everyone who has joined to help. So thank you for all that you do, because I know I've had several constituents reach out and give good words of encouragement to all of you and remarking how efficient you have made the vaccination process. So thank you for all that you have done. I just have two quick things, and one of them goes with, the proof of residency or proof of employment. I would just say, whoever, if you have people going out into largely Hispanic communities, just caution of how we talk about that and ask that they bring that, because the word proof is going to be a trigger word for them. And so I just ask that, that the health department just make sure that they explain that this is just for the vaccine, just to clarify that you live here in this county. So that's just something I wanted to make sure that we clarify when we talk to people in the community who are from Hispanic portions of our county. And then also, the other point I was curious to see your thoughts on my line of thinking was that maybe once we get to phase 5, or I believe it's phase 5, when the vaccine opens to everyone, do you believe that we may have more of an influx of Hispanic members coming in because they may not understand the phases and all the different which family member goes now, or no, you don't go yet? Maybe that now, once it's open to everyone, more Hispanic people will come. That's my line of thinking, and so I'm hoping that's what happens.
Absolutely. To your first point, Commissioner, completely agree. We are nervous about making sure that we are approaching your community in the right way. That's largely why the vast majority of people who will be put out into the community to do this are community health workers, many of whom are from the Spanish-speaking community and know how to guide them through kind of official government kind of paperwork and all that sort of stuff that they need to do for health insurance and that sort of thing. So we're trying to make sure that it's the right messengers out there, helping them understand what kind of documentation that they need. So that's first. The other piece in regard to phase 5, we do anticipate a big surge when we get to phase 5, because it is very difficult for people to stay up to date on who's eligible, when and where can I go, when is it my turn. We have kind of a short lead time on knowing what's coming. So we just found out late last week that phase 3 and 4 we're going to open up on Monday, which doesn't give us weeks to kind of prime the communication pump and all that sort of thing. So I do think once we can put the message out there that this is available to anyone who works here in a walk-in basis or by appointment, whatever your preference is, I think we'll see that uptick. And I have let KDHE know that we are in support of moving to phase 5 for that very reason. And they have let me know that phase 5 is probably coming much sooner than we initially thought. So I would not be surprised if that happens in the next couple of weeks, in fact.
Wow, that's great. So thank you for, like I said, thank you for the information. It's and all the operations that you do. And like I said, I've had several constituents reach out and comment on the efficiency and what we've done. So thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you.
All right, Jan, if you want to go to your next presentation on the Youth Fatality Review Board.
Yes, sir. So you have all seen a very brief introduction to this when we met last fall. We just gave you a couple of introductory slides. So tonight I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into the data that we have available, what this is about, what next steps are, and what you can anticipate from us. So this data that I'm going to dive into here quickly is vital statistics data. So this is data that is based off of death certificates of the youth who have died within Wyandotte County. And it is what coroners put on those death certificates. So I want people to understand that we have limited access to data, and the data that we do have is very specific to just what's on the death certificate. So what we can tell you today is, on average, over the last 10 years, about 33 youth have died per year in Wyandotte County, which sounds like a small number, but we are a small community. And one of the things that's pretty concerning and surprising to us is when we look at the trend of the rate of youth death over the last 10 years, you can see here starting in the middle that from 2015 to 2018, we were seeing a nice steady decline. And now in the last 2 years here, we're seeing a 200% uptick. Obviously 2020, we hope is a bit of an anomaly year for us, but we are really invested in making sure that that significant upward trend does not continue in that direction with that level of severity in coming years. When we break down youth deaths, and I first want to explain that we are considering youth deaths to be anybody age 1 through 24 who lives in Wyandotte County. We include those 20 to 24, that 19 to 24 range, because quite frankly, the cognitive development of a 19 to 24-year-old more closely mirrors a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old than it does a 30-year-old. So in terms of their development, our 20 to 24-year-olds are still in the stage of their youth and in their cognitive development, that they are not where we would want them to be considered an adult in kind of these circumstances. So based on the death certificates, as I mentioned, we can break down primary causes of death into 4 buckets. One of them, the largest one, unfortunately, there in the Navy, being homicide. About a third of our youth deaths are attributable to homicide. About a quarter, 26%, are deemed natural, and those are really just youth illnesses, oftentimes cancer, unfortunately. Just shy of 13% being suicide, and about 28% being accident. And when we approach this from a public health perspective, we consider homicide, suicide, and accident or unintentional injury to all be preventable, which really means that almost 3 out of 4 youth deaths in our community are preventable if we know where and when to intervene to be most effective. Oh, hold on. It's not showing right. There we go. Let me try to reshare this. Well, I'm going to leave it like this because it won't show my my right side when I do that. So I'm going to leave it like this for just a moment. I apologize. What you're looking at here is on the left side a representation of youth death by category for Kansas, and on the right side for Wyandotte County. You'll see there are some differences, but the main difference, and the difference I wanted you to take home with you, is in the brown category there of homicide. So in the state of Kansas, for the last 10 years, for youth deaths age 10 or 1 to 24, 10% of those are attributable to homicide. In Wyandotte County, it's 33%. So there is a drastic disparity between where we are and where the rest of the state is. And we'll talk about this later, but this is part of one of the reasons why we need a youth fatality review board. There are also striking disparities in between sexes in Wyandotte County in terms of who is experiencing youth death. So you can see here, females are represented in the yellowish orange color and males in the green color. And the male deaths far outpace the female deaths. So they are attributable to almost 75% of our deaths. And again, you can see here in the green for ages 15 to 19 and 20 to 24, it really is our young men who unfortunately are experiencing this death on such a disproportionate level. When you break it down a little bit further by sex between male and female, you can see here the top 4 causes of death. The primary one there, unfortunately, being firearm. So actually, if you look at all causes of death across all youth deaths for the last 10 years, about 35% of them are attributable to guns. Of homicides, 89% are attributable to a firearm. So we have a serious firearm issue here in Wyandotte County that is really plaguing not only our entire community, but our youth especially. Motor vehicle crashes there as the second leading cause of death is not surprising. That is typically for youth, generally speaking, the leading cause of death oftentimes for youth. And similar with cancer, we would expect that to be there as well. Last piece of data here before we talk a little bit more about kind of the makeup of the board is, of course, by race and ethnicity. So what you see here is interesting. It's surprising to us the Latinx and Hispanic portion of death is actually pretty representative of the portion of our community that those folks make up. So about 25–26% of our community is Latinx or Hispanic. Of course, here, the real outlier is our Black community. So they only represent about 1/4 of our population, and yet they represent about 38% of youth deaths. So some serious disparity here along racial lines, which of course is not surprising in Wyandotte County. So there's some of the data. And again, all I have are kind of those high level statistics that we can pull from the death records. And part of the initial piece of this conversation of why a local youth fatality review board is necessary is that we do not have more granular level data than that. We do not have access to understand these kiddos' stories, to understand their lives, their risks, their protective factors, why it is that they ended up passing away, unfortunately. There are different sectors of our community that have access to that. Obviously, our public health or our public safety officials have access to case files and their work. The schools have access to their school files. So there are different pieces who understand different pieces of this problem of youth death in our community. But unfortunately, nobody is bringing all of those pieces together to take a really comprehensive look and really contextualize these deaths to better understand why they're happening and how we can prevent them. So as I mentioned, there's a lot we don't know. We really only have this high level data. There is a state of Kansas Youth Fatality Review Board. It is run out of the Attorney General's office at the state. Unfortunately, it does not meet our current needs. So they convene regularly, they review youth deaths, and they put out an annual report about trends of youth deaths in the state of Kansas, but there is nothing in those reports that is county specific. So again, if you look at, as we did a moment ago, the portion of our deaths that are attributable to homicide compared to the state, you can see right out the gate that our youth are dying in different ways from different causes than youth perhaps in a frontier county in Western Kansas. So for that reason specifically, we really need to have access to our Wyandotte information around our youth deaths so that we can look at it from a local context. And as I mentioned, there is currently no real multi-sector group who are looking at this data kind of across organizations at a county level. But what is a Youth Fatality Review Board and what do they do? So the purpose again is to bring together a diverse group of stakeholders, and we'll talk in a moment about who those people are. But they have this kind of overarching goal, of course, of reducing youth deaths by doing 3 things. First, doing comprehensive reviews of individual youth deaths to understand why they died. So we're talking very specific. We're talking bringing together, let's say they went to Children's Mercy, let's bring together their health records. If they had a caseworker and they have information on file with DCF, if they were with one of our school districts and they have school truancy data, if they had an interaction with law enforcement, there's law enforcement data. It's bringing that all together to one place so we can understand the full situation of how and why this young person died. And then as we're doing that and kind of reviewing individual youth deaths and those start to kind of accumulate, it is the job of the Youth Fatality Review Board to provide an analysis and evaluation of trends. So I was able to show you some trends tonight. I can tell you, we've had an increase in the last 2 years, but I can't tell you if we're seeing trends in, the number of gun deaths down to the neighborhood level in, in a certain way, in a certain place, in a certain time. I can't tell you real specifics about which intersections in our community are we seeing traffic fatalities specific for our youth. Some of this stuff that's just much more granular, I can't tell you today because I don't have access to that data. So that's a piece of this as well, making sure we're keeping our fingers on the direction things are moving. And then thirdly, and of course, most importantly, to take all of these findings that they have, the trends and the evaluation that they conduct, and provide recommendations for intervention. So that's what this is all about. Let's take the data, do the analysis that we can do, and let's make recommendations to people who are on the ground and can put interventions into place within our community. So the review board is not in and of itself a board that will implement a program. So if the review board decides we need more after school youth programming for our male youth, for example, this review board will not raise funds and implement that program. This review board will report out to you all with relative frequency, I hope. We'll report out to our CHIP Violence Prevention Committee. We'll report out to our Thrive Youth Violence Prevention Project that we partner with. And we'll report out to a number of community groups and stakeholders to provide them with data and information, again, to identify the best interventions for our community. So this is really a data gathering and an understanding board, and a board that needs to communicate to the community about the direction we can move. The one thing I want to make sure people also understand is what this Youth Fatality Review Board is not going to do, and that is assess fault by a victim, an agency, a teacher, a childcare professional, an officer of the law. This board is not interested in fault, because that's not helpful to us. This board is interested in understanding how are these things happening in our community and how can we intervene to fix them. And sometimes, yes, this will mean individual organizations need to change policies or practices. The health department, we serve youth, we may need to change policies and practices. So some of that will happen at the organizational level, but even more impactful will be the interventions that need to happen across siloed sectors in our community, and in a collaborative and joint way that can serve our youth in reducing some of these deaths. So we surveyed a large number of our community partners, I think almost a couple hundred last fall, to put out this idea of a Youth Fatality Review Board, what they would like to see in this board, who they think should be on it, what they think the goals should be. And what they told us is that they want this review board obviously to inform community strategies. So a lot of them would be on the receiving end of the recommendations that this board would make, and they signal to us that they are ready to receive those strategies in order to inform the work that they're doing. To reduce intentional and unintentional injury deaths, which is interesting, a pretty specific piece of this. And then thirdly, pretty illuminating, of course, to reduce racial and ethnic disparities in youth deaths, specifically caused by homicide and suicide. So interesting to us that our community partners honed in on some of these disparities right out the gate without us providing them with any of the data, because they know that this is happening. They've seen it happen for many years now. So these are the goals that the community identified. The Youth Fatality Review Board in and of itself will formally adopt goals that they will refine as they begin to meet next week, and we'll talk about that. So we cannot have this Youth Fatality Review Board be successful if we do not have very strong participation by a number of core partners. And I'm excited to say today that all of the partners listed on this slide have fully committed to being a part of this board. And the majority of these, we already have data sharing agreements in place with us, which is fantastic. USD 500 has stepped up. We've got a data MOU with them. We've got one with KU and with Providence. Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network is at the table. So these big, large entities that have access to this data that we can't get anywhere else are willing to kind of lean into this with us. And I think that's very telling about the shared understanding that we are already beginning with across the community of what a serious issue we have in front of us. This isn't the entire list, though. We are working on rounding it out. We want to make sure that this group represents our community racially, ethnically, in terms of type of service delivery. We need this to be a diverse group so that, again, this isn't just us in ivory towers getting together and looking at this and dictating to the community. This needs to be a community participatory group. And so a couple of the initial meetings will really hone in on rounding out the group and making sure that we have diverse representation. And you can see here a number of other organizations under consideration who have signaled to us that they would like to participate if they're able. So we plan on bringing a number of these into the fold as well. And you'll see on the previous slide that a parent who has suffered the loss of a child is already going to be a member of the board, as that is, of course, a paramount viewpoint to have among us. So lastly, to wrap up here, what's going to happen in the next few months is very exciting. Actually, our very first formal convening of the Youth Fatality Review Board is next week. We are bringing in an outside consultant to lead that first meeting, and we will likely maintain the use of a consultant over the course of the next year. And we're doing that because we think it's really important to have an outside, unbiased, nonpartisan agency or individual lead us through what are going to be some very challenging and difficult conversations. It's a difficult conversation that can be had, that is facilitated by an outside entity, then could be had by, for example, even the health department. We like to think of ourselves as unbiased and kind of outside of some of that, but of course we all have our biases. And so we're excited to bring in an outside facilitator to help us have a very kind of coherent and agenda setting meeting starting next week. We are working to continue to push for legislative modifications at the state level. Things are unfolding there as we speak. We're trying to get access to even more data that we should have access to, that the State Youth Fatality Review Board has access to, but that we do not. So there's a little bit more data kind of work to embark upon, and finishing data sharing agreements with our core members, solidifying membership, as I mentioned, and then starting, getting our bylaws in place and really putting into practice, what are the concrete next steps? How many cases are we going to review annually? What is this report out structure going to look like? What is the annual report going to look like? How often are we going to come before all of you to provide you updates? All of those kind of logistical things we're honing in on now as we look towards the second half of spring. So there's a lot happening. I know that was a lot and I went through it pretty quickly. But I feel very energized and excited about the momentum that we have, about the number and the strength of our partners who have stepped up with us, and about people leaning into this new public health approach to violence prevention that is a little bit different than what we've done before here in Wyandotte County. So I'm just appreciative that our partners want to be in this with us, and would love to hear all of your comments and ideas for how we can keep you all informed.
Thank you, Julianne. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Julianne, for that. I strongly support this. This is something that is very needed here based on the data, the high level data that you provided. It shows that this board is very needed for our community. This subject, hits home to my district. There was an increase in youth violence in my district, and I believe it was Rosedale. And so that's something that has been a very important topic to a lot of my constituents, is the violence, but most importantly, the youth violence. And, my background is working with the youth. So this is something that I'm very excited about. And so thank you for bringing it forward. And as always, if I can assist in any way, please let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. All right.
Okay. That takes us.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Julianne. That now takes us to the Tax Administration Coordination Committee. Mr. Bach.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Bach, County Administrator. For several years, we've had a group of our staff members from various departments that come together. They're commonly referred to as the TAG Committee, to coordinate different things that we look at in our tax administration, as the title calls out. So we wanted to present this commission because I think this is an activity that goes on that kind of flies below the radar, that not everyone is aware about and what they do. So we're going to present that this evening, and I will recognize Chris Cooley, who is over our base mapping department, who is going to lead off the presentation tonight. Chris?
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all. Bear with me as I get my screen share going. Hopefully you can see that and get my notes. So as Doug has mentioned, the tax administration group, or multi-department collaboration, our focus is on coordinating and streamlining cross-departmental activities and workflows essential for the efficient and accurate administration of property taxation in Wyandotte County. This includes both personal property and real property taxes. This group has existed in one form or another probably since the 80s. the group used to actually meet on a weekly basis. With technology, we don't have to meet as frequently. We can exchange quite a bit more things through email and solve issues. But it really is a way for us to collaborate and communicate on common issues that exist around tax administration and everything that has to do with the entire tax cycle, from assessment and appraisal and identification of property to sending out tax bills, sending out distributions, delinquent tax, as well as things dealing with exemptions and special tax incentives. It touches many departments. There's no one department, no single department that is responsible for all phases and all aspects of property taxation in Wyandotte County. And that's why it's very important for us to come together in this way. There's a couple of us that have even worked for other counties, and having this kind of collaboration doesn't exist in some of those other counties in Kansas. It is kind of difficult at times for them to get things done. So we like to celebrate our ability to communicate and talk with each other and solve problems together, and really work on this stuff as a group. Primary stakeholders in this are the clerk, the appraiser, the treasurer, as well as myself in the mapping department. We all fulfill some sort of statutory obligation as it comes to the administration of taxes. Generally, we also have some guidance and oversight and regulation, coming to us from the Kansas Department of Revenue. Other departments that you see on here that are certainly stakeholders because of their interest in the tax cycle would be groups like economic development, the land bank, the register of deeds with their custodianship of all of our land records, delinquent real estate, certainly technology, and then the legal departments all have supporting roles and stake in what we do in our collaboration. And I'll let Kathy Briney with the county appraiser speak to this slide in the next couple slides.
Hello, commissioners. You probably saw a timeline similar to this when I did my 2021 valuation report. What this basically shows is that it starts with the appraiser's office, because our effective date of valuation is January 1 in classification. But as you can see, and I'm going to use 2021 as a example here, is January 1 is that magic, valuation date. What happens is right now we're in the appeal process. By May 20th, we have to get those appeals out and we have to certify. Then we kind of pass that baton to the clerk's office. Then Hattie over in the clerk's office takes that baton, and she has to work with the taxing entities and create her mill levies, and she has to have it's between June and November that she's trying to do this, so it's kind of ongoing. She communicates, I know, with many of you on this as well, and when she's done, it's typically around November 1 is her statutory date that she has to basically hand her baton then over to the treasurer's office. And then the treasurer's office then distributes those tax bills. And so December 20th is when the first half of for instance, the January 1, 2021 taxes are due. But you'll see all these dots down here, and it's kind of, it's just kind of an ongoing process. Well, back in June, when we were, after we certify, we start working on 2022. But when you see the dots from the January 1 to November 1 dots, those are all from the 2020. So we have 3 years worth of years we're working on, and tax years we're working on in a given year. So appraisers would be 2021, then 2022, and then treasurers is working in 2020 and 2021, and it's just always a constant here. So it shows that throughout the year that the treasurer will send out different tax statements on real estate 3 times a year, for personal property tax statements up to 5 times a year, And then they have just kind of different distributions they have to do as well. So it's a moving, phase. It's just basically a phase delineation that we have to go through every year. So the next slide.
Sure.
Yeah. With us, the tag operation, I was glad to see that because I'm kind of one of those, I've been in different counties too. So when Chris was talking about the, communication part of it, is a lot of counties don't have that communication. And I was really glad to see those, silos down and that there was some communication and that this tag group existed. So when I started to go to those tag meetings, it was very eye-opening to me. And part of our function, is to discover, list, and value the property of both real and personal property. So we've got 68,000 parcels to worry about, and then we have the 7,500. So to not communicate with these other offices is just, on our scale would be not good. So then we have to defend those appeals. And, I know that the legal department helps us out a lot with that. I give big kudos to Wendy there. Then we have to certify the clerk. And, during that time period, the tag group does do a calendar. We have a very, very detailed calendar that we work through, and all the tag group works on that, and to make sure that we have everything dates down. We hold each other accountable pretty much through that process. And we also have the exemption processing, and we have to work with multiple departments with just processing exemptions. So we do coordinate tag meetings. I'll give a shout out to Matt in my office. He has been the facilitator for the last several years, and he has done, he keeps our team site going, sends out the agendas, keep us on track that way. One thing the appraiser's office has done for tag as well is we've helped coordinate the new lands web replacement, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But so those are just some functions that, without the tag, we would really be lost without. So I will pass it on to Rick McKessick, the treasurer.
Thank you, Rick McKessick with the Treasury here. We have a few main functions as it pertains to this group. One is the delivery of the tax bills and unpaid notices. Kathy had mentioned that briefly. We send out in 3 separate mailings, we send out over 100,000 real estate tax statements. And in 5 separate mailings, we send out over 11,000 personal property statements. And whether a person gets one or multiple statements has a lot to do with how much they pay and the timing of when they make the payments. Some payments may require additional mailings depending upon how they make the payments. With regard to collection of taxes, we're collecting motor vehicle, personal property, and real estate taxes throughout the entire year. Payment options include cash, check, credit card, debit card, and ACH. And then processing options for those payments include my WICO app, online, drop box out the annex, mail, and in person. And it can vary a little bit according to the exact type of payment being made, but those are all included in how we will collect the taxes throughout the year. On the distribution of the taxes, as it was noted in the timeline, there are 5 different distributions during the year. The one in January is the largest one. We distribute over $130 million in the January distribution. And then we have a March, a June, a September, and October distribution. And combined, we will distribute probably about $300 million in a given year. So there's a lot of activity that goes through here as far as the collection of taxes. When we do those distributions, those 5 times annually, it includes real estate, motor vehicle, commercial motor vehicle, heavy truck, recreational vehicle, motor vehicle excise tax, special city, county, and highway and pilot payments. And that's probably way more than you want to know, but that's all included in those distributions. And then finally, the collection of delinquent real estate taxes. We accept full or partial real estate tax payments. The only time we might turn a payment away is if that parcel has been marked as being in the next tax sale. At that point in time, they have to make arrangements with the delinquent real estate tax office. And when we do collect delinquent real estate taxes, they're collected in the same method as regular taxes as far as that goes. And we include those in the distributions as well. And that is a great segue into the next presenter, which is Wendy Green.
Good evening. This is Wendy Green with the legal department. I'm just going to talk about delinquent real estate briefly because you just had a presentation in January in the tax sale process from Jenna Hillier. So I'm not going to bore you with how the tax sale actually works again. But this department is responsible for collecting the delinquent real estate taxes through the tax sale process. It also coordinates with the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, and appraiser's office, because once we have a tax sale, if properties aren't purchased, they go to the UG. And so that means these departments are getting a huge list of properties that they then have to transfer within their systems to the unified government and then onto the land bank. So it's nice for us to be able to give them all a heads up when this huge workload is going to hit them, and we try to make it as painless as possible for them. The delinquent real estate office always works very well with the treasurer's office as well, because although we do give people whose properties are marked for the tax sale their options, the delinquent real estate office does not collect any money whatsoever. They can't, and hopefully they never will, and it'll stay with the treasurer's office. So we do coordinate with them when we give somebody their options. We make sure the treasurer's office employees know what options these people have to get their properties out of the tax sale. And with that, I will turn it over to, I apologize, I don't know who's next.
Be Hattie Smith with the clerk's office. Hattie, are you on? You were on earlier. See that she's there. You go.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I thought my camera was on as well, so I'm trying. The clerk's office, we're sort of in the middle of all the groups that are involved in taxing. And what we do is once we receive the certified numbers from the appraiser's office, as well as the state, then we start our process in putting together what will end up being the tax bills in November. However, we do start as early as June 15th. We do have to have to all of the municipalities of Wyandotte County, we have to have an estimated budget sent to them that they'll base their budgets on and return back to us by August 25th. So we do have that information that we're starting to work on, because we try to give each municipality a letter, a communication that will help them understand what we need, what the timeframes are, what the deadlines are from a statutory perspective. And we get that sent out to them in May. And then starting in June, when we get the numbers back again from the appraiser's office and from the state, giving us all the numbers associated with real estate, personal property. And then from the state, we get the state assessed utilities. Once we get all these numbers back, then we're able to start to put together numbers that will formulate into another communication. So then the entities or the municipalities will be able to form their actual budgets and send back to us. Receipt of certified budgets from each of the municipalities is very important. That's due to us by August 25th. After we get those numbers in, we begin to set that information up, but we're also going to receive numbers from across the unified government that will give us anything associated with special assessments, things that have been billed or charged and they haven't been paid, they become liens and they will show up on the annual tax statements. That's a one-time situation. Once we get them, we will apply them to the tax statement, and that's what you'll see as special assessments. We determine and calculate county and municipal mill levies based on their individual valuations. When they send their budgets in, they will project what their mill levy is, but we will actually do the calculation based on the funds that they've requested to support their particular municipality. And for the municipalities, I did want to just mention that we do get them from the unified government, the county itself, from KCKCC, the only college that we have, and every tax unit across the unified government will support both the county and the KCKCC, the college. There are 4 cities and 1 township: Bonner Springs, Delaware Township, Edwardsville, Kansas City, and then Lake Quibira. Those are our cities. School districts, there are 4: USD 202, 203, 204, which is Bonner USD 500, KCKPS. We have 2 libraries that are supported by the budgets: Wyandotte County Library and then KCK, Kansas City, Kansas Public School Library. We have 3 drainage districts: Fairfax, Call Valley, and Walcott drainage. And then we have 1 self-supporting municipal improvement district, or SMID, that are all requesting funds based on their budgets. We determine and calculate that information. And then around October, we try to get it out about the 19th of October. We give them a 7-day window, give them an opportunity to review the numbers, their valuations, and the mill levies that will be driven based on the numbers they're given. We wait 7 days before we move forward. During that 7-day window, we freeze all activity. You may have seen notifications across the UG, but we freeze all activity until they come back and say that everything is good, or they don't say anything, because silence is consent at that point. After the 7-day window, we will proceed to actually push those numbers into our tax administration system that we utilize. They will then become collectible dollars, which Treasury can then collect funds on. Once they're pushed in our system, even if they haven't received their statements, Treasury can then collect money on those amounts that have been generated within the tax administration system. So that's pretty much what I have.
Then we'll go to Nancy Burns with the Register of Deeds.
Hi, everyone. Commissioners, good evening. Mayor, good evening. I'm Nancy Burns, the Register of Deeds since 2011. And our records here, well, first, I cover the whole county, and it is an elected position. We cover the whole county. And I feel that the Register of Deeds is also the core of all these entities that I'm with on the tax tag team. Without us filing the documents, none of these other people would work on getting their jobs done. So, and last year, just FYI, we filed almost 23,000 documents here. Most of those a lot of those are e-filing, and that is, we are the core. We not only serve this tag team, our office does work with other entities. For instance, we have so many people that subscribe to our documents here, and we collect revenue that way. And that's probably 23 people outside the external people. But internally, we do serve not just codes enforcement, which is not part of the tag team, but there are many, many entities out there that need our documents and to know who is ownership of those documents. We preserve all the land records here, clear back to the 1800s. I do welcome any of you to come to our office and look at those documents, ask questions, see how we e-file. But We are the basis of the accurate tax roll. Without us, nothing else could really, all the entities could not function very well. I don't really have too much else. I'd love to take questions. Again, you commissioners, the mayor, everybody's welcome here. But we do work very well together as a team. County clerk, when we file documents, we have issues, we call her, or vice versa. Clerk's office works with us very well. Land bank files documents here. We file about 110 type of documents here, from mortgages, from liens, state tax liens. So we're just not real estate. We do a lot of lien. People come in and just search, and genealogy people. I do help them. My staff doesn't have that time to go back in the books, but we're very, my staff and myself, as many of you know me, are people persons, and we are here to be customer friendly. I don't know, that's about it. Thank you. Whatever.
Thank you, Nancy.
Good evening, everyone. We're talking about land bank, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. You see it with Judd quite frequently. But like Wendy was saying, when we have a land, one of the tax sales, those properties go to the land bank. So we have that maintaining that inventory, and we do work with Nancy a lot to record those deeds and to just get those properties back on the tax roll, and to help those neighborhoods out so they don't have vacant lots and overgrown lots. Let's see. Well, yeah, and so we just work with like real estate, legal. It's just a great collaboration, a great group of folks working in the community. And then economic development, where anything working with taxes and tax districts. So we work with the tax increment financing districts and also the industrial revenue bonds. So anytime there's going to be something going on with taxes, and also with the Neighborhood Revitalization Act, so that's the property tax rebate. So anything you think of like development and taxes, economic development is there represented at the TAG meetings.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. I'll speak to my office, the mapping department, and really do thank Nancy for preserving my muted. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. All right. Really do want to thank Nancy for preserving and being the custodian of all those land records. It really is the basis of the mapping that my office produces. You know, we mentioned that there's 68,000 land parcels that real estate that we're mapping. It's our responsibility to maintain those. We originally created them, decades ago in the early 80s. We created that mapping, and we've been maintaining them today. Approximately 2.5 staff members work on parcel mapping as well as other tag related activities. One of those being the parcel mapping. Another big one is the maintenance of our taxing unit boundaries. Hattie listed off all those taxing entities. Each one of those in many cases has its own unique geography, and where they overlap, it creates a unique taxing unit. And so we have to look at the legal descriptions of those and where they intersect, and each one of those then creates a new taxing unit. So we're considering all the city limits, boundaries, the school districts, drainage districts, those TIFs, and even the SMID. So that's one of those mapping efforts we do that really drives and identifies those things, because otherwise Rick wouldn't know where or which taxing entities to distribute those taxes that are collected, which entities to distribute those taxes to. Customer service is one of our key things that we have in mapping. We really are one of the kind of the go-to subject matter experts when it comes to land records. My staff and my office and myself are always dealing with customers walking in with questions about property ownership and the mapping of their property and questions related to the ownership lines and so forth. in one of the biggest public facing ways we deal with that also is through our dot maps mapping application. You know, that application we've had for quite a while, and I have had plenty of good comments from the commission as well as the public that use it and they utilize it and the information that it contains. I know its importance because when we have a problem and it's unavailable, I'm generally getting calls and emails rather quickly. So you know, it as being one of our easiest you know, electronic self-service kind of gateways for anything dealing with property ownership and taxes, we understand its importance. Next, I'll go on to talk about technology. The technology department has had a long history with the TAG group as well, going back to the days before when we had in-house systems for our tax administration. We had a system called LANS. It was actually on a mainframe many decades ago. And the calendar that Kathy spoke of that has very detailed responsibilities and passing of the baton during tax season is an evolution of a calendar that was used when we had to worry about running mainframe jobs, and we had to do things like, well, we got to make sure we put the paper in the server room so that it acclimates to, you know, so that it can be printed on. So there's a lot of things that technology did over the years. The role has changed, and they don't do that kind of level of support and running jobs like they used to. Now they support our primary you know, information systems for the tax side and real estate ownership side. It's a product called Tax Administration Solution from Computer Information Concepts out of Colorado. CIC is the name of the company. CIC and TAS, or TAS and CIC, are synonyms for us. And then there's certainly the Orion CAMA system, and CAMA stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal. That's from the Tyler company. That's the primary system that the appraisers are using when they're doing that. The technology department has a very strong role in supporting the servers, the back end, the backups, integrating updates and things that are coming from the vendors and the software manufacturers on those. So it's a very important kind of role that they play in making sure that we don't have any problems in what we have to do, you know, in getting the tax bills out.
Hello again. This is Wendy Green, and the legal department doesn't have as many functions as all these other departments within the TAG group, but we're here for support for all the other departments within the TAG group. Legal department, and specifically me, handles all the tax sale matters as well as all the upper level tax appeals. I also answer general questions that the TAG group itself might have when we're at our meetings. And I'm assigned as the attorney for the treasurer's office, delinquent real estate, land bank, appraiser's office, and the clerk's office. So it helps very much to help coordinate everybody's efforts to try to get these taxes out there, keep the properties maintained, and also to get these taxes collected, especially during the trying times that we're having right now. So basically, may not be as active, but we are always here for support.
Can I interject something? Without Wendy, all of us would be lost. I have to give kudos to her. And I know Doug Bach's on here, and do not take her away from us.
I'm going to kind of cover this next slide. To the right, you'll see like all the different collaboration, and Chris will talk about that here in a second. But on the collaboration and planned replacement of the LANS web, we have kind of, I guess, over the years, we've been looking at a LANS web replacement, and we have poor Greg Miller, who's been trying to crutch along our LANS web system that was, I don't even know when that was actually put in place, but it is a very useful tool, and they've tried to collaborate all the, you know, appraiser and tax and clerk, and you know, so if you, I know that a lot of you commissioners and probably others on this, and maybe even the mayor, has used our LANS web out on the web, and unfortunately it is broken. So we have been searching for an enhanced or an alternative, and we've come up with an enhanced parcel search solution. And I know that Commissioner McKiernan had reached out to me a while back too. I don't know if you know this, remember this, but you were like, why isn't the photos showing up on Lands Web? Where did they go? And basically it can't, this system is broken. And so years ago, I think it's been several years ago, DOTS came to us, the tag group, because it is a tag software, and said, you know, you need to, we can't support this anymore. So we have collectively been working on a viable solution and to replace. And on the next slide here in a minute, we'll talk about that is a win, and it will be in place really soon. So we can talk about that here in a second. And I guess I'll go ahead and talk about it, because I thought it was on this slide, but I guess it's on the last slide. What we're getting ready to do, and we get to see kind of a preview with the vendor, is we currently have what's called a parcel search. And I don't know if you've looked out on ours, but it does have all of our appraisal information. You can pull up the property record card. You can see a photo of the property. You can pull up your comp sheet. Well, they enhanced our parcel search to where it's more of a, it's a nicer view, more user-friendly, and it's more of a nice web presence. And what this will do is they've changed it to where it's kind of going to be a one-stop shop for all of the real estate business, that one can come to this one site, this enhanced parcel search, and it's a tag solution. Instead of it just being the appraisers, we're making it a tag solution. And we have actually, where you can go to this site, and it will have all the links to, if you want to pay your taxes online, if you want to change your address, you know, in the clerk's and the appraiser's office, if you want to, you know, it's going to have basically everything in one stop. So we're really excited to roll that out, and that'll be coming in probably the next several weeks. And when you go in there, it'll be an enhanced experience, I believe, for the users, to where they don't have to go searching, because it'll have the mapping, it'll have all of our appraisers and all of the clerks and treasurers information in there. So this has been a long haul trying to get to this point, but we're just about there. So we're really excited. So Chris, I'll let you talk about the other collaborations.
Well, I mean, we're certainly always, you know, that's the really exciting one is our, it really does become a customer service portal for the entire tag group. You know, one place where anybody dealing with any kind of tag kind of interest, you know, whether it be, you know, mapping, whether it be clerk, appraiser, treasurer, you know, you know, it won't replace the department websites in any way, but it'll certainly be a one-stop shop where you can link to those other things depending upon the tax-related activity that you may have. You know, we're starting to collaborate more on the use of forms, you know, making digital transformation of our workflows, you know, working on that. All the numbers on the right hand side of the screen are different things that different people have mentioned throughout the presentation today. You know, the amount of dollars collected, the amount of assessed value, you know, about the number of parcels that we have, you know, the number of records that Nancy has in her office. You know, there's just a lot of things that we're all doing together, and it's all tied together. Certainly our lessons learned is that you know, you know, this and creating a stronger understanding of the entire process by all parties. You know, we aren't just in our silos and our sitting at our own desks doing our own thing. We care about how something in the process impacts the other office, the other department. You know, we want to ultimately have better customer service. You know, we all strive within the tag group to try and answer the questions that come to us, and you know, no matter what they are. I will frequently answer, appraiser questions as best I can to the extent that I can until it really is becoming a question about appraisal that needs to be answered by an appraiser. So if they just ask me what's the value, I'm happy to provide that. And I am sure many of the other people are happy to do that same information for somebody. But when they need to get an appeal, then yes, that's where Kathy needs to take over. If they just want to know how much their tax bill is, I can tell them that, and any of us can tell them that. But when they need to actually come in and make a payment, then they go to Rick. If they need to record a deed on their property, then yeah, they go down to Nancy's office. So we all know what each other does, and we all want to help the citizens and customers and other UG departments out as much as we can. And that collaboration and having the workflow that flows between us is always very, very helpful. This time, I'd like to open it up and see if there are any questions, and welcome those for any of the people that have spoken today, as see how we can help you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for this presentation. Commissioner Byron.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the team and all of the collaboration that you do. I think that is fantastic. I have two very specific questions for two of the presenters, and I'm asking them because they pertain to a couple of things that I've dealt with as an elected official. So my first question is for Wendy Green, and my second question is for Register of Deeds Nancy Burns. Wendy, with regard to the legal process of letting a property owner know that their parcel that shows them as the owner is going to be moved into a tax sale. When we talk about giving them personal service of that notification, what specifically does that mean, please?
Sure. The tax sale process is actually a civil lawsuit. So when we talk about giving them notification, we are actually talking about serving them papers like they would be served if it was any other kind of lawsuit. So we have the process server's office over there on the 5th floor of the courthouse, serve all of our addresses that we have in Wyandotte County. The only thing we have to go by is what they have told us their addresses. So we always have the property address we can try to serve. If they have told us their mailing address is different, we have that we can try to serve. And then we also use a product called LexisNexis, or it's either LexisNexis or Accurate Person Search. And so it comes up with all different kinds of addresses. So there might be two owners, but there could be 10 addresses that we have found associated with those two. So every address we can find, we send them some type of notice. If it's in the county, we have our process server send it to them. If it's in the state of Kansas, we send it to the sheriff's office for those counties and have them try to personally hand it to them. And then if it's outside the state, we do it by certified mail.
Okay, thank you very much. So in county, generally is going to mean personal service is going to mean a process server handed that person directly in person the notification.
If they can find them, they hand it to them directly.
Okay.
If they can't, the law also allows us to leave it at the property or leave it with anybody who happens to be at the property that will accept service on behalf of that person.
Okay, thank you very much. And Nancy, with regard to your work in the Register of Deeds office.
Yes, ma'am.
When a parcel changes ownership, is there a time frame for?
No, there's no time frame. I mean, if the deed's filled out and they bring it in, and it could, I've seen where it's very interesting. Sometimes people come in, they've held on to this deed and they've never transferred it, not knowing where to go. A lot of people get very, very confused on what to do. And unfortunately, it costs money to create a deed and do it the proper way. I'm finding, and Wendy can speak to this too, we have a lot of title people out, title companies that they want the money. They don't help the smaller people that need to do a proper deed, and to do a search with the title company is costly to a lot of people. So when they bring that deed in, it could be an old deed and we'll file it as long as, if it's never been filed here, we'll file it.
Okay. So, I mean, with regard to us having good records of who owns what,
Yes.
if the parcel changed hands, and the deed was never filed, then we aren't going to have that. Would that be true?
That would be true. We wouldn't have that unless it's filed here. We have no knowledge of that. I will say what we're seeing a lot of is that people, and I think Commissioner Ramirez might speak to this, and other people, because a lot of the Hispanic community, they do not understand that they need to file a document here, and they've done contracts out there with individuals and never filed anything here, even an affidavit. Hello, does somebody want to say something?
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Anyway,
okay.
And a lot of them don't understand that. Then they'll come in here, they've done a contract, nothing's been filed, they've paid them off, and they're coming in here wanting their deed to their property. Well, we have to send them away and tell them to go back, have them sign it over. They don't understand that. And a lot of times they're being taken for a lot of money. I had one lady, it was like, I think 45,000, and she paid him cash, and that was it. She didn't get a deed signed over. But that's the scary part, and that is the very sad part of not going to a proper title people. But there's not very many that'll do that kind of a quick claim deed or a warranty deed, because they want to do the title search, because that is more money for them. Am I making any sense, Melissa?
Yes, I really appreciate it. I mean, you've brought up a really important point as far as, I think people, you know, it's almost as if the unified government should hold a special session with you just to talk about contract for deed.
But there is,
you know, we've grappled with that for a long time. But I guess my question, I mean, in addition to that information, if I've done my transaction for sale by owner, then I may or may not have used a title company, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And I will tell you, when they do bring their documents in, what we do, and Wendy might yell at me about this, but we do look at everything. We go back to the prior deed to make sure the legal description is correct. I know I'm not, you know, I should just file the document. But what I have a problem with, if we do not do our diligence and say, you know, this isn't what was on there prior to them deeding it over to you, this really needs to be corrected. But I can't legally not file it, but we do our diligence and tell them that is wrong, or you don't own that, or you're going to have to go back and correct this. And a lot of times, I will tell you, the issue we're having is very poor people that get nabbed with bad notaries. And then we have to send them back away, and they have to go back and create a whole new deed. But on the contract for deed, Melissa, unless you want to go up and down the street saying, you know, if you have a contract for deed, you probably need to file it here. How do you reach those people is a question.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
No problem. And I would be more than happy to come in front of the commission and just talk.
I think it would be a really good idea. And I think it would be one where we would want to encourage the public to be present, because people do not understand at all.
No, they don't. You're absolutely right. I have, you know, and people have had contracts for deeds, and a lot of them are good, and they've paid them off, this person, then the person does deed it over to them. But it's that little piece that of group of people, or anyone, I shouldn't say group of people, but a lot of them just don't understand. You got to have something on file to cloud that title so they don't sell it out from underneath you. Does that make sense?
Yes, I thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commission? All right, well, seeing none, thank you all for the presentation, very informative. Go out and get those tax revenues so we can pay our bills. All right, that concludes our special session. We will reconvene at 7 o'clock for our full commission meeting. Thank you.